Our next address will be from John Milton, who has led a lifelong career as both an ecologist and spiritual teacher. He will speak on the beauty of finding resonance between those both spheres and recognizing the power of ancient knowledge and wisdom. Among his many accolades, John was one of the architects of the U.S. National Environmental Policy Act, one of the founders with David Brower of Friends of the Earth, and served as the White House's first ecologist in 1972. Since the 1980s, John has been a master teacher of meditation, Tai Chi, and Vision Quest retreats. Most recently, he is focused on developing an earth-honoring, liberating set of principles and practices that merge the heart and mind openness of spiritual exploration with a scientific grounding in ecology. His passion is to help shift human spiritual systems towards an environmentally sustainable way of life, creating a new cultural foundation for the West that he refers to as sacred ecology. From this perspective emerges an earth-connected spirituality that recognizes all living beings as one's true community.
My background environmentally was being very much involved in the early 60s with realizing that there wasn't, in those days, we just really had a focus on conservation and natural resources. You didn't have the word environment being used very widely. And things like regeneration and sustainability were not being used hardly at all. Hard to imagine these days, but uh, when I began working in the early days for the group, a precursor to the World Wildlife Fund, um, one of the things I wanted to do is to help provide a basis for helping people see the natural world as a whole system that included. So we had a more open view of nature as a full global ecosystem of which we were a dynamic part. So I began asking to go out into nature as a young man, uh, to spend time alone, to really bond deeply and completely with nature experientially. And I remember I began trying to do that when I was around 4, but my parents and grandparents wouldn't let me do it at that age. So finally, when I reached the age of around 7 years old, they said, okay, it's okay for you to go out alone. And I spent a short time, it was only 4 or 5 nights and days, a little less than a week, of deep solitude in nature in a very primordial area in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And that was really my birthing into the experiential connection of being part of the whole system. So spiritually, I was birthed into this kind of connection through the vision quest process with the help of my grandparents and parents. My grandparents, especially, had maintained an indigenous perspective, and that was very helpful to me. I think in helping bring me into this vision quest experience. Then I began to, because of that experience of the whole system as a reality of humans' relationship, true relationship to nature, not dominating nature, having dominion over nature, but being a co-equal partner in the dance of life. From that, I began to become attracted to things like ecology and biology and the sciences of life and whole systems. So I went from that to eventually becoming involved with the environmental movement birthing process, and I trained in ecosystem ecology at the University of Michigan, where it was one of the few places where they taught ecosystem types of analysis. So that was really both an experiential spiritual side and more of an indigenous perspective with the vision questing, which, by the way, I maintain I do at least 1 or 2 a year, every year from age 7 on. And that has continued to support me and deepen my own experience of the deep spiritual truth of connectivity to the rest of life and the family of life. I noticed that there are really 3 kinds of nature. The world of outer nature, which had been a great deal of my work and my concern, the world of ecology, the rest of the family of life that we've been talking about, and establishing connections with that and all of the elements as well. But there's also the inner nature aspect, our emotions, our feelings, our perceptions, our sensations, and all the basic raw material of our experience of life and our experience of that connection with the outer world. So how to help people refine that experience of connection, initially through providing things like experience about tracking, how to meditate in nature, how to take the tools from Taoism and Buddhism and indigenous peoples on how to refine the awareness so that through the senses of sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, balance, and movement, and the flow of energy, we could learn how to go deeper and deeper into this experience of connection. But at the same time, I also realized there was a third level of nature too that was being ripened or opened by this wave nature process, and that's true nature aspect of being, which is the foundational level at which from which all nature and from which we ourselves arise. In most traditional cultures, that I guess the common word these days would be source, a field of pure, formless, open, vast, unborn, undying awareness and consciousness that lies as the foundation of being, out of which all life arises, manifests, and ultimately dissolves back into this pure, unbounded wholeness of pure source awareness that lies at the level of your true nature. So it's the outer nature level, the inner nature level, and the true nature level that we begin to cultivate with the way of nature. If we're able to transform the blockages within ourselves so our energy is truly free of the main blockages of fear, anger, ignorance, hastiness, various kinds of attachments and aversions, worry, um, and all the things that tend to bind the energy, we can become much more effective and powerful warriors for the benefit of the rest of the planet and the rest of life. That means that if you're facing a novel situation environmentally as an environmental warrior, and you're struggling to find a way to work with this situation skillfully, if you can touch into the true nature level of your being, answers can arise to that situation which are completely novel and incredibly creative for that situation to bring about a resolution in the most profound and regenerative way. If you just come from the level of the normal ego-based mind, the creative responsiveness is far weaker, far less complete, and often far less creative. And here are some of the tools in the toolkit that provides this capacity to unfold within one's own heart as well as within one's own culture.